Hello, welcome to the Literary Gladiators. I'm Andrew, and today I'm taking part in the Sandwich Book Tag. I'm pretty happy with the choices I've made for the questions, and I'm going to get right into it. Number one is the Peanut Butter and Jelly Sandwich, a work that serves as a great introduction to a particular topic. Recently I mean no more than 2 years now, I've been pretty involved with chess. But this book started it all. The Collier Quick and Easy Guide to Chess. It's pretty much, I think, maybe like the dummy book of its day. It's by Richard Roberts. When my dad found out I was looking into chess, he had some books in his basement, and this one was a surprise. I didn't know it would be as valuable as it was with resources and such, and it was pretty entertaining. A lot of dated humor where, I don't know, there's a couple instances where he just automatically assumed you were a smoker, and like, I don't know, he kept saying funny things like something like, this move would be, you'll desire this move as you would a cigarette or some such, but it's a good fossilized extract of the mid-20th century America. It's a great book, and I was happy I came across that. Number two is the Ham and Cheese Sandwich, a working class work. And the first thing that came to my mind, and I'll probably be doing this with the next one as well, I'll just keep with the beat idiom of first thought, best thought, and that would be The Town and the City, from Jack Kerouac. The first I read of his, and his first major work. This always leaves traces of a really hardworking spirit, and depicted well in the town of, I haven't read this in a while, it was a Garrow. Anyway, it was representative of Lowell, Massachusetts, so you really caught the spirit of like the Milltown, Massachusetts, the hardworking family of the 40s America, and also the hardworking nature of the writer in New York City. This is something I'll have to revisit a lot. I've said more than a couple of times probably on this show that this is one of my favorites of his, and it is. That would be my ham and cheese. Number three, the grilled cheese, is a great experimental writer, and of course when I think of writing an experiment, I almost only exclusively think of William Burroughs' The Naked Lunch, another favorite. This might have not been his cut technique proper yet. I think that came after here, but this still utilized samplings of manuscripts that he kept of his day-to-day in Paris and Tangier, and keeping with the experimental, the experiment is it was pretty radical, having a junkie main character going through Inner Zone, and there wasn't a clear plot, and I probably have read this whole maybe 3 times, and it has meant or brought something different to my mind each time, and it's a great combination of say sci-fi and satire and society. It's an excellent reflection of oneself in this book. The next one, The Italian Sandwich, is a bestseller you feel people need to check out. I'm kind of saying that to myself because I had kept off Stephen King for a while. Stephen King is bestseller. You think Stephen King, he sells well, and he's well liked. For the longest time, my niche is horror, gothic literature, For the longest time, I've said, I've read so much horror, I've never touched Stephen King, as if that made me cool. It was like a feather in my cap, but turns out I was really silly and ignorant by stating that. The first book I read was Full Dark, No Stars, and I was sold from that point forward. The novella 1922 actually gave me a nightmare, and from there I read The Shining, and this is one of my treasures. I got this at a local library sale for $0.25, and it's the first edition, and that was great. And just recently I read It, and that was a lot of fun. So if you're like me, and if you were put off that it was so popular and a big seller, it's a mistake. You should check out just because he's a prolific writer doesn't mean he's just churning out words. It's quality stuff. And number 5, The Turkey Sandwich, a writer you cannot go wrong with. That would have to be, and I am most likely pronouncing it wrong, but Murakami. I selected Kafka on the Shore, but there's a lot of others of his that I read, and they've all been excellent. Even it was a recent book. It didn't quite connect with me. Even when it doesn't connect with me, or I feel it's like Lassler, it's always meritorious. There's always exceptional value. So this definitely, I've never gone wrong with any of his works. I read 1Q84 and Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World, and those just came to mind. But those were, and this of course, the Kafka on the Shore. Those are up there amongst my favorites. So yeah, you can't go wrong with him. Now 6, The Steak Sandwich, a work that is subject to intense arguments. And I suppose because the steak sandwich, it's always like, what kind of cheese do you have with it? Is it cheese with onions, without? It always seems to be a big debate with the steak sandwich. So, keeping with debate and at the very least, and sometimes controversy, I would pick Christ, A Crisis in the Life of God. More generally speaking, I can get into fits of like religious histories and narratives, but the New Testament is something that I always keep going back to and reading about. But this is the top of the line of that. Jack Miles, Christ, A Crisis in the Life of God. This was his follow-up after God, A Biography, which won the Pulitzer. Excellent beginning to end narrative with fact and storyline. That's an A+. It's a great book. Number 7, Chicken Parm Sandwich. The most fascinating topic you saw turn into a book. And I did this for my year's end for 2016. And this is just such an exceptional novel, The Fisherman by John Langan. This is the only book that I've ever read, and immediately I started reading it again because it was just so fantastic. Fishing, it's not something that I do, but I could understand it. I could get into it. I'm totally a fan of solitude, but the first part of this book deals with loss and grief, and it's two gentlemen who get together, and ultimately, they want to heal from it, but they find solace in fishing. And what happens ultimately is where they end up going fishing is a thin veil of reality where something else is fishing for something ancient, and I won't name it, but fishing takes place throughout the whole novel. So the topic being fishing, I thought it was a fascinating topic that wove the stories together. It really sinks down into some excellent myth storytelling, and I couldn't recommend this book enough. It'll probably pop up on every video I make. But John Langan's The Fisherman. Number 8 is Tuna, a work you had low expectations about, but turned out being impressed by. And that is Robert McCammon's Swan Song. This is something I wanted to read because when I was younger, I was already sold by the cover, and I thought, yeah, that would be a pretty great story. But when I was younger, I wasn't much of a reader. And why I didn't have much expectations about it is because I always heard that it was like such a ripoff of The Stand, which at the time that I read this, I hadn't read The Stand. I didn't have any knowledge, but that's what you'd always hear when you heard about Swan Song there was definitely a symptom of the mid-'80s that this type of story came up like organically. So The Stand and Swan Song are absolutely disparate novels, incredibly similar, but they are two different books. This was like when I started getting into reading, this was one of the first, because I found this, there's other versions of this with a different cover, but I was somewhere like a thrift shop or somewhere. I was like, oh, I remember that cover. That's what I wanted to get into. And so, yeah, it might have gotten me into reading, I think, maybe. I've read other things before, but that was, it's like, I really enjoy reading after that. Number 9 is the BLT, a morning read. I don't necessarily have a morning read. However, I do have a book that I will always associate with the morning, and that is because it's something I stuck with through jury duty. And in the morning, I would. It was just an excellent consumption model for reading during jury duty. Is The Listeners by Lenny Zumas, and the main character loses her sister in a tragic way early on, and it's a lot of fragmentary memories, such as trauma would be, and the main character also has like a really brief glimmer of rock star status, and it's also her slide from that. But it's like a collection of vignettes. It was just perfect. You could read a section, and if they called your name, you would be at a point where you're like really satisfied with what you read. But for a week of jury duty, I finished this, and I was such a fan of Lenny Zumas. I had to immediately pick up Farewell Navigator, which is her earlier collection of short stories. Both of these A+. Should check those out. Those are excellent. Number 10, S'mores, a work you would read while camping. And what comes to mind is Jeremy Bates' Black Canyon. It's a short story of main character Brian and who's unraveling, and his two dysfunctional parents as they camp in western Colorado, Black Canyon. And it's a pretty dark, frightening short story, and short stories are pretty good for camping because you'll have something completed. And as for that story, I'd like to even quote like the first three sentences, but I don't want to give anything away because it is kind of like a dire and gnarly subject. Yeah, it's pretty severe, but it's a pretty fun thrill ride. So that's my s'mores book. Number 11 is The Hero Sandwich, an anthology filled with all-star writers. And for that, I picked the anthology Joyful Noise, which is the New Testament revisited. A lot of contemporary writers giving their take on the New Testament, and yeah, a lot of great essays and short analyses, perhaps, but it is just a star-studded cast with a lot of heroes in it. Rick Moody, Darcy Steinke, and Jeffrey Eugenides, Lydia Davis, Ann Powers, and I was lucky enough to be at the book release party for this, and I have like a third of the people autograph it. I have Rick Moody, Darcy Steinke, Ann Powers on there, and a few more on the next page. But this is, it's an important book of mine. It's pretty good. Number 12 is the Dagwood Sandwich, and if you're familiar with Dagwood from the comic strips, he's always making prodigious stacks, and he's known for making large sandwiches. What is the largest, most intimidating book you read? And don't even have to think about it. It's The Instructions by Adam Levin, and it was enjoyable. It was like a good book, and I think it was like 2010. I got this. Got it with some Christmas gift cards, and I remember getting it in the mail. Wondering how many books there is. Oh, I just ordered one book. It's but yeah, this is and it's no small font either. I mean, it's a lot of words, but I'm proud of myself that I read this. And so, you know, like I said earlier, I recently read it, and that was also a pretty good sized book. But yeah, I like having this, and it's in McSweeney's book, and they always have like the removable sticker that talks about it, and it's a story of a 10-year-old kid who is stuck in kind of like an alternative school for problems, and it's very possible he's the Messiah, and he goes about taking action, and a lot of this is a lot of this is him coming into his own, and yeah, it was a good time. It was like 7 years ago I read it. There's a lot of particulars right now that are coming back to me about it, but yeah, that's my Dagwood. Then number 12, that was 12. 13, what's my favorite sandwich? And kind of changes day to day. I could say like consistently it's always like hamburger. But recently I've been eating a lot of roast beef, and my sister's turned me on to whole grain mustard. So I'm gonna say roast beef and whole grain mustard, because right now that's what I've been eating a lot of. So that's my favorite sandwich. And for the last is the platter. Who do I tag? And I am going to tag Jen from Check Her Joy, Becca from My Dreams of Reading, JD Estrada, Hazel West, Acelia, and Dom from The Book Thief. And I hope I laid out some interesting titles for you, and thanks for listening, and I will see you soon.